Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson, your host. For this episode, we are focusing on our Myth Warriors series. Of course, our Myth Warriors are the assertive, powerful, positive stances that we take in life, because we are going to get out there and we are going to address whether or not some of the things that we think, we hear, we even believe are accurate. And we're warriors because this is a battle. This is a battle for the absolute essence of our professional and personal success in helping us surpass our personal goals and professional goals. So our target for today is a topic that I'm going to probably do a couple of different episodes and types of programs on, because it's such a big pervasive issue. And I'm going to argue it's a myth. And the topic is, of course, I need a mentor. I need a mentor. Now, this is a very common concept. It's an idea, and in fact, it's something that if you start to parse it, sort of take it apart, you can understand why this is such a popular idea, and I'm going to argue a myth. So we're looking at this idea. I need a mentor. And on the face of it, it's something that some people would argue is just, not even a discussion. Many people would say, look, it's pretty evident that having a mentor, having someone who is looking out for you, who is in the position to influence other people, to utilize their power, personal connections, or to share with you their skills and expertise, it seems, pretty obvious that this would be, a great, wonderful, awesome thing. And I don't understand how this is debatable, and I certainly don't concur that this is a myth. And if you're looking at this concept only from that perspective, I concur. I agree. Having a mentor, having someone who has the power, that has the personal connections, that has the experience, that has the skill set, that is going to go and invest their time and energy in us individually, and they're going to help us open doors to opportunities. They're going to help pave the way to our success. They're going to call personal favors in that they have and sort of put us in positions for opportunity. This sounds fantastic. Sign me up. And looking at the mentor from this perspective, it's almost, I think, somewhat analogous to the idea of someone who was fortunate enough to have a family maybe that they were born into, or a community. And their family, maybe their parent, maybe their mother was a powerful politician or a powerful business person, or has wealth and connections. And so all that parent has to do for that their adult child is just sort of put the word out. Call people they know and say, hey, look, I have a child and they want to be in finance, and I know that your firm is the most preeminent firm in finance, and I'd like you to go ahead and hire my child. That would be, again, awesome. I personally would love that. If I could be born again and be aware of it, I think it would be beyond delightful to have that type of relationship where someone can care enough about me individually, be invested in my success, have power, connections, wealth, the ability to go out there and make my life easier, to sort of, clear a path for me, to open doors for me, to be an advocate for me. I want this. I think this is great. The challenge is, when we're looking at this concept, is if you're not born into that type of good fortune, then you have to look outside of maybe a family friend or biological relative. And that's this idea of mentoring. And the idea is you put together programs, and you put together people who have the ability to make things happen and who do care about success. And you have them couple up with somebody who really has a desire and a need to achieve. And especially when you look at corporate America, and by that I mean not just in the U.S. and the States, but sort of corporate culture globally. The ideas come up, and they're fantastic programs. I've even worked with clients client organizations that are doing this. So the client organization says, look, we need successful, awesome people. Okay, that's everybody's problem. That's the global rush for talent. And, that's the two parts, sort of the polarities of the global employment situation, right? There's this desperate fight, and battle amongst organizations, whether they're, government or private sector, for talent. And if you're really talented and you have a special skill set, my gosh, your prices are incredible. You can charge these incredible premiums. There are people who, because of their skill set and it's so unique, and they also have the soft skills, which are, discipline, organization, timeliness, communication skills, they can charge several $100,000, and some of them at very young ages, because there's this desperate need for intellectual capital. So if you're on that end of the spectrum where you have those unique talents and skills, it could be, high-level mathematical skills, high-level conceptual advertising skills, and you have the drive and you have the self-discipline, you could almost name your price, because everybody in the world clamoring for the same talent. And you get into bidding wars, and it's fantastic on that end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum is a large number of people who argue, look, I can't even get a job. I can't even get a decent job, right? A job with, a regular schedule, and maybe, especially in countries like the U.S., some where they're voluntary benefits, meaning an employer has to decide if they're going to offer something like a sick leave or a vacation. So many people on the other end of the spectrum are saying, look, I can't get anything. How on earth are these other people competing, for these thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if sometimes in the private sector, stock options and they're, seven-figure deals. I mean, how's this happening? And it's all about the specific skills. And so on the other end of the spectrum, there are a lot of people who either don't have the specific skills that they need at the level to compete, where employers see their value, or they have the skills, but they don't know how to convey that to people, right? It's sort of like they keep it a secret. And so when you look at that, the people who already have these really unique skills, then they don't need a mentor typically to get into a situation, because they're already, being heavily recruited. If you look at the other end of the spectrum, where people either have skills, but they don't know how to let people know that they have the skills, or they don't have the skills, and they often do need mentors. And the idea is kind of this. We're going to try to replicate for people the experience that someone who's born into a family of either wealth or privilege or access just kind of automatically has, right? Like they can just go to their family or family friend and say, hey, I need this. And they'll pick up the phone or, shoot an email over, and boom, it's done, right? Like you got a job at that place, you're in an internship, you've been admitted to this, prestigious program. Like I'm here, it's done. And I'll tell you what to do when you're there, right? Like I'll tell you who to talk to and how to act and what the best thing to say would be, so you can continue to be more successful. So mentoring is awesome. And again, at the sort of middle to fatter end of the spectrum in terms of numbers of people in the global employment arena, people think, well, look, if I'm not born into this, how do I get access to that information? How do I get access to those power structures and that network? And so the idea of mentoring is a great idea. It's always been around informally. You can read any book or novel or historical narrative, and you'll see mentoring over and over and over again in so many different societies, right? You see it in ancient Greece, you see it in ancient Rome, you see it in so many different tribal histories around the world, that the elder person takes someone under their wing and sort of teaches them what they need to know, and sort of sees some special in someone early and kind of helps make things happen for them, and is also a sounding board for them when they are not sure what to do, or when they've made a mistake, to help them kind of reorient and understand, like, the big picture. You're going to be fine. This is something that we all go through. So the mentoring is always been there. It will always be there, informally. And also formally in a lot of different societies throughout history. There are formal programs, right? There's someone, and that might be your benefactor. That's someone who is going to, be your mentor, and that's great. The question is it a myth? Is it a myth, okay, that you need a mentor? That's the question. So if the question was, is having a mentor awesome, then the answer, I think, would be, yeah, that's not a myth. Having a mentor is awesome. And the more knowledge and power and connections and expertise that your mentor has, then the more awesome it is, right? Like, that's not the issue. The issue is, and the reason why I really wanted to, begin to address this on this episode, is I meet so many people who explain to me a little bit about what their goals are. And of course, my question is always, how can we help you surpass your goals, right? And a lot of people they kind of know what they want to do, and they can tell you, they can articulate it, which is, half the battle. The challenge is they'll fall back in this position and they'll say to me basically, look, I know kind of where I want to go, right? But I don't have a mentor, and I need one. And until I get a mentor, all I can really do is just sort of, wait for that mentor or try to find one. And there are a lot of people who are really aggressive about this. They're joining every type of, club or organization you can possibly imagine, all of which is the idea of networking, right? That you'll go out and you'll meet people, and then I guess the idea is that they'll be, it's like being discovered almost, like, an actress or somebody's going to be a movie star. They're there somewhere, and here's the powerful person, and the powerful person who runs the movie studio looks and sees them and says, that's it, that's my new star, right? And they discover them right then and there, and they take them under their wing, and then they, help make things happen for them. And I think that's kind of the idea in sort of a rough analogy with this sort of professional mentorship, where people sort of believe, look, if I find that mentor, that advocate, maybe I'll meet them at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, or, some sort of, group, whether it's a human resources group or, a finance group or an engineering group, or, or I'll meet them on a college campus. Maybe there's someone there that's in the faculty or administration that can be of assistance, or I'll go to some sort of industry event, maybe in Silicon Valley, and I'll meet them. And the idea there, it's the same type of thing, right? Like, we'll make the connection, they'll see that there's something special in me, and they'll go out of their way, right, to sort of invest in me, listen to what I want, and just sort of start making things happen, making phone calls and emails and setting up deals. And so, again, does this happen? Yes, it does happen. We all know it happens. It's not a fantasy. It does happen. Could it happen to you or I? Yes, it could happen. I wish I had even just a penny for every time we reiterate, anything is possible. Anything is possible. Now, it's true. The question is it probable? Possible means it could happen. Anything could happen, right? In the next 10 minutes, aliens from another, solar system could come and abduct me and take me there and make me their leader of the universe, which might be awesome or, horrible, depending on how the details turn out. My point is, it's possible. Anything's possible. The question is it probable? Is it likely? How likely is it that will happen? And the odds are that we sort of get discovered for our intellect, our ambition, our acumen, our potential. It can happen. It does happen. It still might happen. I'm not, a young person anymore. I'm not in my teens or my 20s. I'm no longer even in my 30s, which is still shocking to me. But I could have my mentor come along and find me. It could happen. Just like my Prince Charming, right? I'm still waiting on these things. It doesn't mean that I'll never have these things happen. But my argument is this. If my belief is that I need a mentor, and until I get the mentor, I'm just going to sit and just sort of hold my status quo. I'm working, I'm sort of doing things, I might be getting more education or skills, but I can't really get out there and start making things happen because I need my mentor. And so I'm networking. A lot of people go online and do this. My understanding is they go on the social network, or they go on things like LinkedIn, and they're out there just sort of sending out messages and connecting, they call it, networking, whatnot. Again, it could happen, and I don't discourage anyone to do that. But my argument is where the myth, the falsehood, I would argue the misunderstanding is that you need that as a prerequisite to be able to get out there and do whatever it is you want to do. And so while a lot of people, again, put a ton of energy into this, and I talk to them and they'll tell me all that they're doing, and they'll be really active, and I don't know enough about that for a couple of reasons. One, I've never had a mentor. And so some people may think, oh, okay, well, that's why you're trying to say this is a myth, because you've never been fortunate enough to have one. And that might be accurate. That might be accurate, that part of my perception on this is that I haven't had one. And as such, then I don't know enough about it. Like I said, I'd like to have one. I'd like to be discovered. If it happens, I'm going to be ecstatically happy. And I'm out and about and always meeting people, and so it certainly is something that I, don't give up hope on. But my argument is this. All the things I've wanted to achieve when we look at surpassing our goals, right? So whether it's a certain type of education, a certain type of income, right? So let's say I'd set a goal and said I want to make over $150,000 a year. Let's say that I'd set that goal. And now that's not an insane goal. That's not I'm going to, be a multimillionaire or a billionaire. But it's a pretty impressive goal for one person. And statistically, when you look at populations around the world, there's a tiny, super tiny group of people that make over the equivalent of 100,000 US dollars per year. So not a household income, which is multiple people counting together, but an individual income. It's tiny. So in the U.S., the best, most recent census figures I have are about 6.2% of all adults in the U.S. make over $100,000 a year individually. Okay, so that's a tiny group. When you break it down by gender, it's even tinier. And I'm not at 150,000, right? I said that was let's say that's the goal. I'm talking just 100,000. And I think that a lot of the things that we discuss and we talk about when I put data out there, when you see me focused on sharing research, is because I think a lot of times we get confused, and whether it's the media, whether it's popular culture, whether it's just sort of the things we think in our head, they're not realistic. In other words, there's this concept, I think, that a lot of people hold that it's easy and that a lot of people make $100,000 a year. And as such, it sort of gets diminished in value. Oh, that's not a big deal. But the reality is, according to at least the U.S. Census, and which, part of the government gets their data, from the IRS, it's not easy. It's a minuscule percentage, right? So it's 6.2% of people in the U.S. individually make over 100,000. When you start to break it down by gender, it's even more either positive or negative depending on your perspective. So I am a female and a proud woman. It's somewhere around 2% of women individually make over $100,000 a year. It's somewhere around 8% of men. And then when you slice it even more by different ethnic groups, right? So, Asian women versus Hispanic women versus Black women versus Native American women versus European American women versus males of all different types of ethnicity. You can slice it by, religion, age, education, whatever. So the numbers get tinier and tinier, right? So let's say it's somewhere around 2% of women make over $100,000 a year in the U.S. That's real. So you're somewhere, I think it's 2-point-something%. So let's round it to 3%, okay? So let's say that you make $100,000 a year as a woman in the U.S. That's more than 97% of women. That means it's not something that happens all the time. And it also means that if you set goals like that, they are achievable. Again, everything's possible. It's also probable if you start to line up the characteristics that people who tend to make that amount of money already possess. This is easy, right? You can go read all the data. The group of people that make that money, tell me some things about them. They tend to have more education. So are there people in that group that, dropped out of middle school and have a 7th grade education? Yes. Are they the majority of that group? No. So, obviously the more schooling that you accomplish, the more it helps you in terms of your overall statistical chances. And when you look at also the amount of people that are business owners or entrepreneurs, a lot of them are in that group because they have the ability to go out there in the marketplace and have much more control over how much revenue they can generate, and there's no sort of cap on how much they can be compensated that's arbitrarily set by an employer. So there are a lot of things you can do. If you sit and you think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to do all these great things. I have it in me. I have the skills. I'm disciplined. I'm organized. I am it. I have the confidence. I am ambitious. I'm a positive person. I know it's going to happen. And then you say, I just need my mentor. And you're sort of, again, just sort of waiting to get the mentor before you can kind of execute your plan. My argument is that's a myth. You don't need one. Would it be great if you have one? Yeah. Do I think you should go out there and do everything to leave no stone unturned to find that mentor? Yes. My argument is, while you're doing that, you also need to be executing your plan. what does that mean? I said a few minutes ago. Let's say your goal is to make $150,000 a year. So the numbers of people that are going to make that are even much tinier than the 100,000, right? So we're talking single digits or percentage of 1% of women, right? Okay. So if that's your goal, then you just sit there and figure out, how would I do that? How do you earn that much income? There are a couple of jobs that pay that much. So if you're going to go to school and become an anesthesiologist, right, a medical doctor who specializes in helping people who are going into medical procedures under anesthesia, they tend to be very highly compensated as a group. You can go research all of this. It's open data, right? And you can kind of see their jobs or the average income somewhere around, $300,000, $400,000. If you go get that job and you just go get the qualifications for it, it'll get you a long way toward making $150,000 a year, right? Obviously. Now, the average means some people make more, some people make less, but that means that's going to be more likely in some jobs. Now, almost all of those jobs require highly specialized skills and or usually a ton of expertise or experience or education. So it's not something typically where you wake up and, on Monday and you decide, hey, I want to go make $150,000 and I'm going to go get some kind of training or read a book or look on the internet, and by Wednesday I'm ready to go. Usually it's not like that. And it's across all types of fields. They're very highly specialized people in all types of industries and all types of activities that make a high amount of revenue. But again, they have highly specialized or a lot of expertise or experience, and then they couple that with all the good soft skills, right? Self-discipline, organization, taking care of your health. So that's one way to do it. Another way is and again, it just makes sense if you start some sort of, entity that generates revenue and you own it, then there's an opportunity there to make more money than you could just by yourself going and selling your services as an employee to some other person who will then determine what they think is a fair pay. So can you make a goal for any financial setting that you'd like to achieve and reach that? Yeah, I totally believe that. I totally believe it. I've worked with, especially as a lawyer, years ago when I started my law firm, very tiny small business. I had no money. I was, I think, 25 or 26 years old. I networked with a lot of other small businesses. And by network, I don't mean I sort of went to cocktail parties looking for customers. I went and bought lists. At that time, I could go down, this is before the internet that we have now, you could go down to the courthouse and you could just, buy a list and get a list of all the people that had filed for what's called a DBA, which is a doing business as, and it's sort of the cheapest way you can start a business in most parts of the U.S. You just go down, you fill out a piece of paper, it depends on where you live, it costs somewhere around $10, and you just put on there that, what your real name is and that you're doing business as, whatever, Courtney's Cleaning Janitorial Service. Boom, I have a company. It's a sole proprietorship. And so we'll do some programs about different types of business entities because that comes up a lot. But I would go get the DBA list because that tells me that there's somebody that wants a business enough to have figured out to file a DBA and pay the $10 or whatever, but they're not so sophisticated that they've gone out and filed for a corporation or done something more elaborate. They're just sort of, at a smaller scale. And I thought probably they don't get a lot of attention, right? Like probably a lot of marketers don't reach out to them because it's such a tiny little startup and nobody really cares, but I did. And so I wrote these really great letters introducing my little tiny law firm, explaining I was a small business owner, and then I focused on that. And I got to work with wonderful clients. I had people who ran, cleaning services and people who ran, little tiny businesses, a car repo company, a trucking service. And a lot of these people were incredibly hardworking, amazing, wonderful clients, but some of the revenue that they brought in was just, it was eye-popping. Cleaning services and, they were bringing in $600,000, annually, which is and it just started, but they were working really hard. Little trucking services or the little repo business that's bringing in, $200,000. That's impressive. So my argument is, again, they didn't necessarily have to go to, 15 years of college, but they do have a lot of experience, and they understood that business, and they understood the soft skills, right? Client treatment, follow-up, organization, and they over-delivered whatever their service was. So they got a lot of repeat business, and they were able to make or at least generate a lot of revenue. Now, what their profits are different depending on, obviously, their overhead. But what's the point? My point is, we all, I think, would benefit from mentoring. I would love to have sort of one advocate who early in life thought I had something to offer and, was there for me and supported me and pushed me to achieve more, I would love that. I've not ever had that. I have on my own, as I think we should all do. I've always tried to reach out and ask people questions because I know what I don't know, and normally I don't know anything because I'm just sort of out there. I don't know, right? Like I read about things and I try to figure them out. But since I don't have a mentor or anybody I can go to and say, hey, how did you, start this consulting practice, or how did you learn to be a public speaker? I didn't know anybody, so I just started doing it myself. And then over time, I'd meet other people who were doing it, right? Because we're, in the same business, and they'd be at some, work-related issue. And then I would ask people. I'd say to them, can I call you? Can I sit with you and ask you questions? And I would then get pieces of information and pieces of people who would be more than happy to do some mentoring. But I've never had that one person come along and say, you're it, you're the one, and I'm going to just push you through in life. It might be because I, was a military kid, meaning my father was in the Army, and I moved around a lot, so I'm not from a certain town. I don't have a certain, community where I was in one place and knew people my whole life. I was, here and there and all about. It might be that I'm really shy and introverted. And a lot of times in life, especially when I was younger in school, in junior high or high school, I would think things, but I didn't talk that much because I'm really shy, and I mostly just kept things in my head. As I've gotten older and I was working, for myself, self-employed, I realized I'm going to starve. Like, I have to talk, and I have to find a way to communicate and relate to people where they're comfortable with me and not just sort of my normal, I'm really quiet and don't like to talk that much. It's not going to help me be able to make people feel comfortable as customers. So what's the point of all of this? The point is, having mentoring is awesome. It is super. It is great. If no one comes along and taps you on the shoulder and says, I want to mentor you, then you need to go on in life and start doing what you want to do. And along the way, there will be people you meet who are doing that thing and have been doing it a long time or doing it at a very high level. And most of the time, if you approach people professionally and politely and ask if they can talk about themselves and their experience with you, they'll love it. Most people love talking about themselves. And most people genuinely have something interesting to share if you open it up and make it about them and not about you. Don't sit there and sort of talk about yourself for 30 minutes and then ask them if they can help mentor you. You're not trying to sell them on you. You're trying to ask them for a little bit of their time and then shut up and listen and let them tell you so that you can absorb that information and knowledge. So my closing point is it's a total myth that you need a mentor. Would it be nice to have one? Yes. If one never comes along and picks you out in life and says, I'm your mentor, I'm going with you all the way, that's okay. You'll be fine. You can always go to people that you meet along the way who are doing what you want to do and just ask them for a little bit of their time and then shut up, listen, and let them talk. And I guarantee you're going to pick up good information. You may never get that mentor who comes to you and says, you know what, kid, you're it. It may never happen. I can honestly say it. I've met wonderful, kind people who share time with me, but there's never been anybody who's come to me and said, hey, you're it. Let's make it happen. And it might happen tomorrow. But my argument is you don't need it. You don't need to wait for it. You need to put down what your plan is, right? And you need to start executing. So if you need to enroll in some sort of program, if you need to get a credential, if you just need to start reading a lot, if you need to get out there and open your cleaning business. And if it means you need to file your DBA in your local area and then just get out there and start getting customers, then do it. You don't need to sit somewhere and wait for somebody to come along and mentor you. Along the way, when you're doing things, you're going to be exposed to other people who already are doing it at a high level, or they've been doing it for a long time, or both, and they'll be happy to share with you a little bit of their time if you are polite and appropriate. But you don't need it. Don't wait for it. Don't cheat yourself out of life claiming you need somebody to lead the way. You can lead the way, and there's no one better than you to lead the way. I thank you so much for joining me. Solutions with Courtney Anderson. Always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com and be part of our community. I love, love, love this program. Thank you.